The movie opens with a woman named Holly pressing on a metal incision in her scalp before turning on an unusual device. Blood begins to flow from her wound as she smiles at herself in the mirror. However, moments later, her smile fades and she begins to cry before eventually turning off the device and wiping away her tears. Sometime later, we see Holly arrive at a hotel with another girl, where they are supposed to work as hostesses for a large party. Her companion then gives her some instructions before they head off to do their work. But moments later, something unexpected happens when Holly suddenly snaps and walks up to a wealthy attorney, brutally stabbing him all over. This causes a commotion among the people, who panic and run away from there to call the police. After the man dies, Holly drops the knife and attempts to shoot herself in the mouth, wishing to die as well. She says, "Pull me out," but begins to shake and hesitates to pull the trigger. Just then, a group of cops arrives and tries to arrest her, but when Holly attempts to shoot at them, they respond with gunfire that instantly kills her. The scene then cuts to a lab, where we see a woman named Tasia connected to a machine. Shockingly, we learn that Holly didn't kill the man herself, as it was Tasia who possessed her body. Tasia is revealed to be an elite assassin who works for a tech firm that uses brain implant technology to remotely control other people's bodies. She sits on a sofa in a secluded lab and manipulates unwilling hosts to eliminate high-profile targets. Once the mission is complete, Tasia returns to her real life by forcing her borrowed body to take its own life. In the meantime, Tasia awakens and is disconnected from the machine. She is then subjected to a psychological evaluation by her boss, Girder, who wants to ensure that she has not suffered any damage to her consciousness. During the session, Girder shows Tasia some personal items from her childhood, which she must identify. She recognizes a pipe that belonged to her grandfather, although he died before she was born, and it was her father who gave it to her. Then, Girder presents a butterfly encased in a box, and Tasia explains that she killed it as a child and later mounted it because she felt regretful. Tasia becomes somber and admits that she still regrets her actions to this day. The test goes well, but Tasia doesn't tell Girder that she was unable to make Holly end her own life. Girder then excitedly informs her about an upcoming mission, which is very important, but Tasia claims she needs some time off to spend with her son and husband. However, it becomes clear that Girder doesn't want Tasia to have any personal attachments. She reminds Tasia that she and her husband were separated because she feared she was a danger to them. This leaves Tasia confused, as she doesn't remember ever having that conversation. Following this, Tasia leaves the office and, on the way, rehearses how to talk with her family and how she will react to their responses. She soon arrives home, where she's greeted by her estranged husband, Michael, and their son, Ira. Tasia tries her best to connect with them, but it's clear that her job is taking a mental toll on her. When she sees the news coverage of the murder committed by Holly, she becomes visibly disturbed. Ira then excitedly shows her his new toy, but Tasia shows little to no emotion in response. That evening, Tasia and Michael get intimate, but during this, she begins to have flashbacks of killing the attorney, which disturbingly start to arouse her. Later, Tasia finds normal life unbearable and quickly calls her boss, saying she's ready to return to work and no longer needs time off. She then informs Michael that she has to leave because something urgent has come up at work. This confuses him, as he believed she had taken time off to be with the family. He urges her to quit despite not knowing what her job really is. He reminds her that their son needs a present mother and expresses how much he hates the growing distance between them. But Tasia ignores his words, her mind already slipping as she begins to see blood flowing from Michael's neck. She then checks on her sleeping son and silently says goodbye before leaving. Long story short, Tasia returns to the company, where Girder reveals that she's considering Tasia as her potential replacement since she is getting old. Tasia responds with excitement, saying it would be an honor to take over her position. Girder then questions her about why she repeatedly stabbed the attorney when she was only told to shoot him quickly. Tasia doesn't respond, but it is clear that she derives disturbing pleasure from these killings and inflicting pain on her victims. Next, Girder assigns Tasia a new mission: to assassinate a wealthy conglomerate named John Parse, who owns a major data mining company called Zoo Through. It turns out that his stepson, Reed, is the one who hired them for the job. Reed wants to eliminate both John and his daughter, Ava, to take over the company and inherit all the wealth. Girder then reveals that once the mission is complete, they can blackmail Reed and seize control of the company themselves. For this task, Tasia will take over the body of Ava's boyfriend, Colin, who works at Zuthru as a low-level employee. The plan is to portray Colin as a man who, unable to bear the alleged abuse from John and Ava, eventually snaps and kills both. Over the following days, Tasia closely spies on Colin, carefully noting his behaviors, speech, and mannerisms to flawlessly blend in once she takes over his body. When everything is ready, the company abducts Colin and implants Tasia's consciousness inside him. She must complete the mission within 3 days or risk serious brain damage, as the implant degrades and disappears after 3 to 4 days, leaving no trace behind. Furthermore, we discover that Tasia must perform a brain recalibration through an incision to maintain control of the host's body, just like we saw her do with Holly at the beginning. In the next scene, Tasia wakes up in Colin's body beside Ava. She immediately feels something off, as the synchronization between Colin's body and Tasia's mind isn't seamless. Despite Girder's probing questions, Tasia deliberately keeps this flaw hidden. She does her best to adjust to life as a man, but Ava immediately notices changes in Colin's behavior. Ava asks if everything is okay, and the fake Colin assures her that all is fine and she shouldn't worry. Later, Colin goes to Zuthru, where he meets his friend Eddie, who brags about the girls he slept with the night before. But Colin doesn't show much interest and heads to work, which is reviewing home video streams and tagging curtains that appear in the footage. Tagging involves identifying and labeling household items captured on camera. It's clear that John has little regard for Colin and has deliberately assigned him to this tedious, low-level job as a show of disrespect. Meanwhile, Tasia begins to experience strange phenomena while inside Colin's body, including seeing things that aren't there and briefly losing control. She also experiences increasingly vivid hallucinations and brief blackouts that leave her disoriented. It turns out that Colin is beginning to resist the takeover, pushing back against her control from within. While returning home from work as Colin, Tasia passes by her house and notices her husband and child through the window from a distance. The sight causes her to hesitate to do this job, but she knows there is no turning back and that her mission must continue. When Colin returns home, Ava is visibly worried since he's late, but he reassures her that everything is fine. Colin then joins Ava and her friends at a party, celebrating one of them getting promoted at Zuthru. The girls begin teasing Colin for holding such a low-level job despite being the boss's future son-in-law, which makes even Tasia feel bad. But Ava stands up for him, saying her father is a cruel man who deliberately tries to make her boyfriends suffer. Feeling overwhelmed by the party, Colin slips away to the bathroom to gather himself. There, he's approached by one of Ava's friends named Rita. She gently asks if they can be friends again, assuring him that Ava wouldn't have a problem with it. Colin agrees, and a pleased Rita suggests they should catch up once she returns from Chicago. After the girls finally leave, Ava approaches Colin and asks if everything is okay. Noting that he's been acting strangely lately, she tells him that if the job is making him miserable, he's free to quit, and she wouldn't mind. However, Colin reassures her that he's fine, and the conversation ends with the two becoming intimate. The next morning, Girder checks in with Tasia to make sure everything is under control. Despite the ongoing hallucinations and blackouts, Tasia assures her that she's fine, which seems to reassure Girder. She then reminds Tasia to perform her daily frequency recalibration, which involves pressing the incision on her scalp to maintain control. That night, a lavish party takes place at John's house, where Tasia is tasked with assassinating him. Girder instructs her to provoke Colin into a public argument to create a motive for the killing. As expected, John turns out to be an arrogant man and humiliates Colin in front of the guests. Colin then indulges in heavy drinking and rudely insults John while confronting him about years of abuse. Ava tries to calm him down, but he pushes her away and hurls derogatory names at her. The confrontation escalates into a chaotic scene, forcing security to intervene and escort Colin out of the house. Sometime later, after the guests have left, Tasia, still in Colin's body, quietly slips back into the house, clutching a sharp rod. She approaches a drunken John, who orders Colin to get out of his house, Although she was supposed to kill him with a gunshot, Tasia instead unleashes a brutal and disturbing assault, beating him mercilessly with the rod. The gruesome attack is witnessed by Ava, plunging the scene into further chaos. The poor girl tries to flee, but Tasia quickly shoots her dead. Now, Tasia needs to return to her original body by shooting herself and says, "Pull me out." But she fails miserably when she is unable to pull the trigger, just like with Holly's case. To escape before the implant dissolves or her own mind is permanently damaged, Tasia grabs a shard of broken glass and tries to stab herself in the head to sever the connection. This damages the brain implant, and the injury causes physical distress in Tasia's real body at the lab. She begins to bleed profusely and convulse, but the doctors manage to stabilize her for now. Her consciousness is still trapped within Colin's body, but she has lost control of it. As Tasia struggles, Colin's consciousness starts to regain control. Confused and unaware of why he killed his girlfriend and her father, he leaves the house, grabs some fresh clothes, and heads to a public bathroom where he removes the incision from his head. He receives a call and answers it, only to hear Gerder's voice on the other end wanting to speak with him. The scared guy immediately throws the phone aside, not understanding what's happening. Because Tasia's consciousness is still inside him, Colin begins to experience strange flashes of her memories. A confused Colin then shows up at Rita's home, where she warmly welcomes him, as she's clearly fond of him. She mentions she's preparing to leave for Chicago, and Colin asks if he can stay for a few days, claiming he's having problems with Ava. Unaware of the horrific events from the previous night, Rita kisses him and heads to the bathroom to shower. But unfortunately for Colin, Tasia briefly regains control of his body. She then follows Rita into the bathroom and coldly shoots her in the shower for no reason. To make matters worse, Tasia learns that John is apparently still alive, meaning the mission remains incomplete. Suddenly, someone knocks on Rita's apartment door, which startles her. Tasia hesitantly opens it, only to find one of Colin's friends, Eddie, standing outside. To her surprise, Eddie also works for Gerder, though he is not an assassin and is in charge of tech support. When a field agent starts losing control of their host, people like Eddie are called in to fix the situation. Eddie then shoots Colin with a tranquilizer and begins the procedure to restore Tasia's control over the body. During the procedure, Colin briefly regains consciousness and experiences a vivid, unsettling vision. In the vision, he sees himself entering the room and violently attacking Tasia. He tears off her face, wears it like a mask, and gains access to her memories. He uncovers everything about her life, her family, and even her home address. Moments later, Colin wakes up in his own body, only to find Eddie lying dead beside him. In shock and panic, he rushes to the bathroom, where his heart sinks at the sight of Rita's lifeless body. He has a brief flashback of the murder and is horrified by his actions. Colin then grabs a gun, and Tasia inside him uses her full strength to force him to pull the trigger. This conflict sparks a fierce mental battle, and Colin is now aware of her presence within his body. Now aware of Tasia's personal life, Colin heads straight to her house and watches from a distance. He begins practicing how to speak to them, just like Tasia used to do. Moments later, he comes across Ira and manages a brief conversation with the boy, whom he finds endearingly innocent. However, Michael is unsettled by the unfamiliar man speaking to his son and quickly calls Ira back inside. Sometime later, night falls, but Colin remains fixated outside the house and stalks the family. Finally, he summons the courage to approach and rings the doorbell. Michael opens the door, and Colin insists that he needs to see Tasia, claiming to be a friend. Sensing something wrong, Michael tells him Tasia isn't home and tries to shut the door firmly, but Colin refuses to leave, and he forcefully shoves the door open and attacks Michael. Colin demands to know where Tasia is, but Michael insists he doesn't know, as she often travels for work without saying much. As Colin becomes more agitated, Michael begs him to explain what she did to make him so angry. An enraged Colin then shouts for Tasia to show herself and threatens to kill her husband. Moments later, Tasia appears to him in a vision, and she calmly asks why he's doing this. Colin accuses her of making him commit all those murders, but she coldly tells him it was always him who did the killing. She then admits that she loved her husband once, though she's no longer sure if that love was ever truly hers. Upon hearing her cold response, Colin breaks down and threatens to kill Michael unless Tasia fixes everything. But she looks emotionless and tells him to go ahead, claiming Michael was only holding her back. While Colin is caught up in the argument, Michael seizes the opportunity to grab the gun. He attempts attempts to shoot, but Colin grabs a nearby meat cleaver and cuts off Michael's hand. He then brutally ends up stabbing the poor guy multiple times, revealing that it's actually Tasya who's in control since she enjoys this kind of bloodshed. After Michael dies, Tasya, who is still inside Colin's body, puts the gun in his mouth and says, "Pull me out," but she is unable to pull the trigger. Then, in an unexpected turn of events, Colin is stabbed in the throat by someone who turns out to be the young boy, Ira. Tasya doesn't show any mercy and immediately shoots her own son, who looks cold and detached. As they lie in a pool of blood, taking their final breaths, we hear Ira say, "Pull me out," revealing that the boy's body is also possessed by someone else. The scene then cuts to the laboratory, where we see Tasya finally waking up in her own body. She looks over and notices Girder also waking up from a possession. It becomes clear that Girder was the one who had been possessing Ira to pull Tasya out of Colin's body. Afterward, Girder asks Tasya if she needs to take a break, but the latter declines and suggests going straight into the psychological evaluation. During the session, Girder presents her with the same personal items from her childhood. Tasya identifies a pipe as belonging to her grandfather, who died before she was born, and claims her father gave it to her. When shown the butterfly, she calmly explains that she killed it as a child and mounted it. However, Tasya expresses no regret this time, revealing that she no longer feels guilt for any of her actions, whether it was killing the butterfly, her ex-husband, or even her child. This pleases Girder, as she has achieved her goal of creating an emotionless killing machine with no personal attachments.